everybody, welcome or welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia, and today I am going to just kind of do a weekend review. I have not completed a whole lot this week. We've had some other things going on, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But let's jump in and review the books that I have completed. Okay, so the first book that I completed was The Seance by John Harwood. And this is the story of a young woman who inherits a countryside estate, completely unbeknownst to her that she is related to these people, even for her to inherit it. And it is a house with quite a dark past. And so this is the story of her finding out how she is related, how to take care of this house. Does she burn it down? Does she sell it? What does she do with it? And so it's her story along with the story of the countryside house, and I found it absolutely fascinating. There were times when I could not stop turning the pages. I didn't want to put it down. It did suffer a little bit from pacing at the beginning, but once you hit a certain point, which was basically at about the point that she inherited, we begin to hear the story of the house, and the two of them together is where the book really got good. So I gave this an A-, and the only reason for the minus points was because of that pacing at the beginning. And I was very sad that this story didn't end a little bit more wrapped up. There were still a couple of questions that I had at the end of the book that were not answered, and it is a standalone. So I ended up giving it an A-. It was wonderful, perfect time of year to be reading it. So the next book that I completed was The Lies of Locke, LaMora, and this was my third attempt to try to finish this book. I had picked it up when I first heard that Murphy Napier really loved this book. I think this is like one of her all-time favorites. So I had picked it up initially when I had heard her talking about it, and I could not get past all of the language. It was constant. And so I just kind of went, you know what, I don't need to read that, I'm good. And then I heard another YouTuber talking about this book, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try again. And I got a little bit further, but when a young boy is using a whorehouse to forget his troubles, I do mean young boy, like he was like 14 or 15, I think, at the time. To be in a whorehouse and to be using women in that manner was about the point that I DNF'd it the second time. But then Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia read this book knowing that it was going to be quite violent, knowing that it was going to be a lot of language, and she ended up reading it and really liking it. And Tiffany and I have very similar reading tastes, and so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna try it one more time. And I was bound and determined to get through this book and figure out why so many people that I like and that I have similar reading tastes to, enjoy this book. I just wanted to know why it was so loved, because I, with as far as I had gotten into it, could not figure it out. And so I finished it. And so this is the story of a young orphan. At least we think he's an orphan. We never really know for sure, but he's on the streets on his own. And he is basically brought into the fold of, similar to like an Oliver Twist situation, where he's brought in to be trained as a gentleman bastard, a thief and a con artist. They call it mummery, where he can impersonate other people, and he does it very, very well. And he becomes kind of the glue of this small little band of thieves that are being trained up by a priest who is the head of the temple of the god of thieves. And because of that, they are respected. It's not like it's a bad thing to be a thief in this world. It's just a bad thing to get caught. So I ended up really enjoying this book. I love the found family aspect of the book. I love the heart that Locke himself has, how he can be somebody that cares so deeply about people and about having some sort of a moral value, even in spite of being a complete scoundrel and even a murderer. He still has almost like with Robin Hood, where they would steal only from the rich to give to the poor, and that kind of thing. Locke has that same kind of moral compass, and he and these boys that make up the gentleman bastards become a real family with one another. And I love that aspect of it. The priest who trains them becomes part of this family also. And he has a real wisdom and gentleness about him that you would not expect in this world or in this kind of way. And the characters themselves are so well written, and just it was a story that was very difficult to read. It's still not something that I enjoyed as much as Murphy or Tiffany did, but it is a story that I can see why it is loved and why it is deeply enjoyable for some people to read. So I ended up giving it a B+. I would read it again because I kind of know what to skip now. And I may go on with the rest of the series if I can work myself up to endurance for all of the multitude of F words that are used. Scott Lynch was very creative in his world, in his characters. I wish he would have created his own kind of thief language so that we did not have to listen or read the F word constantly. So there's my little soapbox. That was Lies of Locke and LaMora by Scott Lynch. And the next one that I finished up was Among the Shadows. I was reading this with Courtney from Courtney Reads, and we both really enjoyed this. There were only maybe 3 or 4 ghost stories in here, which we expected the entire thing to be ghost stories, but there were only 3 or 4 ghost stories in here. And I think we enjoyed all of the ghost stories. We thought that the first story in the collection was the best, and we really liked the 2 stories that it ended on. But all of these stories, I'm pretty sure, all of these stories were written before her first published novel. And so we felt like these were like ideas that she was writing down, story ideas, story fragments. So we didn't feel like everything that an author writes should be put into print. But we could see little threads from these stories that were later used in her actual novels. So that was pretty cool. So Among the Shadows, Ellen Montgomery, and like I said, A- read. All right. My last one is more Oscar Wilde short stories with Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia. I read 3 more out of here, and we decided to continue. So I will be wrapping up more from here. But the 3 that we have read since the last time that I reported are A Dedicated Friend, which I absolutely hated. Tiffany didn't hate it as much as I did. She didn't like it, but she didn't hate it the way that I did. And Remarkable Rocket, which we both cracked up at. We just thought it was so funny. And then The Nightingale and the Rose. And one thing that we are realizing that Oscar Wilde does with his short stories is that they are very fable-like. So they all have a lesson that is to be learned. They all have a point that they're trying to make. But that point that they're trying to make is not necessarily super obvious in all of them. And it also is not the only thing. So they just have a lot to unpack. And we have really enjoyed unpacking these together. And I should say that The Happy Prince, which was the very first one that we read, was my favorite. And then we just read The Nightingale and the Rose, and that is probably my second favorite. I really loved The Selfish Giant too. Yeah. So what's up next? I have 1 book left on my pile of possibilities that I haven't read yet, and that is What Moves the Dead. I have not been in the frame of mind to start this, and so I wanted to be, because I want to give T. Kingfisher her due and not read something when I'm not in the mood for it. So I will hopefully be starting that this week and continuing with my Oscar Wilde reads. And I might have a couple of other things that come in from the library that I could pick up also. But those are kind of what it is. So the reason that I didn't get very much read this week is because our twin grandsons kind of took a turn for the worse on Sunday and ended up in the NICU at the hospital here in town, and they just could not figure out what was going on and why. They appeared to be having some sort of little seizures. They were losing weight. They thought that the blood sugar was off with 1, and just different little things, but nothing was adding up to an answer and how to treat it. So they were airlifted to the city hospital that is not too far away from us, the big city, and they are in a specialized unit there. But we have been basically filling our days with our older grandson, who's almost 3, and just a lot of prayer and wanting to be with and there for our kids and our little twin newborns. So if you're a praying person out there, please be praying for our grandbabies, because we still don't have any real answers. And that is basically all I have for you. Thanks for joining me today. I would love to know what you are reading. I would love to know how your October is going. What kinds of fun things have you guys been doing? I took the dog for a walk this morning and we played in the leaves because they are just falling in droves right now, and I'm just loving it. So our weather just took a turn downward, and I'm loving that too. It's so nice to be back in the Northwest after being in the South for so many years. So thanks everyone. I hope that you are enjoying what you are reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to.